Welcome to Hidden Horrors, the show where we uncover the shadows hiding inside your favorite films.
Welcome back to another Hidden Horrors video where we dive into films that isn't horror but have a lot of horror elements in them. I'm Brian. This is Ashley, and we're joined by BatFan Comics here from Instagram. How are you doing today?
How's it going, guys? How you doing, Ashley? How's it going, Killer B?
Doing pretty good. Glad to have you on. I know when I was thinking about discussing the Batman that came out 2022, I was like, we should definitely get him to be on this episode. I definitely feel like you can add a lot of insight, being such a big Batman fan. Because I know Ashley didn't grow up watching Batman like that, but I seen a lot of the animated series and seen all the movies, and I even watched some of the episodes of the old show, like when they had like the spelled the word "pow" out on the
Yeah,
screen, like
Adam,
yeah. Like I seen all of that stuff, those things.
that
So
animated series, the movies, and the 1966 Batman that covers a large, major part of Batman's history. So
yeah.
that's huge. I hope you don't mind my cat Bodie photobombing
No
like
worries at all.
my bat. But yeah, and I just wanted to say before we got started that I was pumped when you asked me to hop on here with you guys. I'm a fan of your page, Killer Point of View for sure, network, and then this new Hidden Horror show. It's cool. I checked out the episode on Seven, which was awesome. I haven't seen that movie in a while, and there's a lot of parallels and similarities I thought with the Batman 2022.
Yes.
And I have the Interstellar on. That's on deck for me. I want to check that episode.
Oh, Inception.
Inception.
I do want to do Interstellar though.
Edit that out. Edit that out.
No, it's fine.
They're both great movies, but it's yeah. What were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine. I do want to do Interstellar. Ashley's never seen it. And I mean, I think Interstellar and Inception are very similar in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So
Do they both have the Hans Zimmer uh, um, score on there? I know.
I think so.
I think they do, right? I know Inception does.
It's both made by Christopher Nolan, so it probably do.
Nolan. He said, yeah, that whole team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no. So yeah, I'm just pumped to be on the episode. Yeah. You got.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your Instagram page. When you started collecting a lot of the comic books, and tell us about your love for Batman. When did that start?
Yeah, well, I was pumped that you said Batman 1966 because that was really my start. I'm old. I'm not that old. I was watching we grew up in Brooklyn. My siblings would come home from school. My mom would get milk and cookies for them, and they would watch the Adam West 1966 show on TV, the reruns, and I would be in my playpen. And my mom says that I think I even have a picture over here of it. I'd be sitting, on the playpen, and I couldn't even talk yet. I was probably like 1 year old, however old I was, and I was sitting there humming to the Batman theme, singing that theme before I even could speak, and just the vibrant colors of Batman, the blue and the gray, Robin, the yellow and the red, just stuck out in my mind. And like ever since then, I was probably like two and a half. I was trying to figure out the first Batman comic that I ever got. I just would see the comics on the stands. I'd be, walking down to Avenue U, where we lived in Brooklyn there, and I'd see the comics on the stands, and I would just, gravitate towards it. So of course, my mom and dad were, feeding the monster, everything that Batman wise, I just loved it. Like, these toys, I took some of my collectibles out here to show you guys these like Mego dolls that were coming out at the time, comics, the TV show, anything Batman. I was just so enthralled with and pumped with. And then obviously that got me into the other comic characters, DC and Marvel. I pretty much maintain, my love for Batman and just the Batman universe all throughout childhood, through middle school, through high school. There might have been, a short time, maybe like in college, where I was just so busy with things that I stopped collecting for a few years, but then I hopped back on, and I've just been really collecting and a big fan ever since. Pretty much have like an uninterrupted run of the Batman comics and the Detective Comics, which was the first title that he first appeared in.
Mhm.
The 50s on up to present day. So, I'm all about Batman. I started BatFan Comics pretty much with this big sale. I had the first appearance, and we're talking about the Riddler in the Batman 2022. But I had the first appearance of Riddler, which was like a late 40 comic book.
Mhm.
The price was right, and I sold it through an auction house. And that kind of was the impetus to really start BatFan Comics, to feature my comics. And I would say probably in the next 5 to so, I'm already selling some, parting with some that I've had for years. And not just Batman, but all of my comics. And I wanna really build this business, BatFan Comics. If at some point I could get like a brick and mortar store, that would be amazing. But right now I'm just an online entity, and I kind of want to build that up. And then of course, the animated series, like you said, I'm a huge fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. This is probably
Nice.
like the definitive Batman for me, like on-screen Batman. I love the Keaton stuff, and the Tim Burton stuff. So yeah, pretty much everything Batman is fair game. I have thousands of comics, and just like a gigantic fan.
Nice. He has an insane collection on Instagram.
I'll have to look.
I,
Yeah.
it's really nice. I showed my two boys earlier a lot of your comic books from Instagram.
Are they
They
of any of the stuff, the comics and the horror?
not really horror, really. Minus my youngest daughter, she loves Pennywise. Um, but they got a couple comic books.
Cool.
Actually, I got a couple right here.
Oh, awesome. What do you got? Oh, so that's DC Rebirth #1, Batman Rebirth 1. That's a great era.
Yeah, that's that was, I think, the first comic books got them.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's the first one. And then also got this one.
I can't see with the glare, Killer Bee. What is that?
It don't even have the name on it.
Yeah, I don't. Hey, you know what? You may have stumped me, man. You may have something in your collection that I don't have. Is that maybe a variant cover? I can't really see the title.
There's the title. It just says Batman 119. And then the back of it is the movie.
Yeah, it looks like you got a bit. You got a cool variant. It looks like it might be a variant there. That probably came out, I guess, around the movie, right? If they were promoting.
Probably.
But
Probably.
so that's Batman volume, I believe 3. So the #1 issue that you have there, I think that's the 119th issue of that volume there. So because they had a few volumes. Cool, man. So yeah, good ones. I like the artwork in that #1. I'm sorry, the David Finch artwork is cool. I love his art on Batman.
Yeah, David Fincher is nice. So let's get into the Batman film and why this made it to the Hidden Horror Show. Ashley, I'll let you talk since we kind of been going for a minute.
I don't know what you want me to say.
Like, what? This was your first time watching the film, right?
My first time watching the whole thing, yes, because we did start it, and then I think we watched about half, and I probably fell asleep, and then we never finished it.
Yeah, it's a long movie.
I watched parts too this past weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's
Really,
literally almost 3 hours.
yeah, you really do kind of have to split it up.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot in it, so I'm glad that they did make it as long as it was because I don't know what you would take out because I feel like it would, kind of mess with the story. But, do you feel like this should be on the Hidden Horror Show?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of aspects to it that fit in there. And again, even with the runtime, it's hard for me, but this didn't feel like, is this over yet? I think that it did a really good job of keeping you entertained the whole time. So that was definitely a plus for me.
We can start with the like the visual.
Yeah.
Um, Batman to me, and you can probably speak more to it because you read a lot of the comic books, but Batman to me has always been dark. Like the universe, the characters, it's always been dark. So to see what Matt Reeves did with this film, you mentioned Seven earlier. It Gotham has that same feel as Seven. Like it's like gritty and like just filled with misery and stuff like that. And that just fits Batman's aura, I guess. What did you think about the visuals of the Batman movie?
I thought it was sick. I enjoyed this a second time through, and it's funny for me to say that I only saw this movie twice, but I liked it. When I saw it in the theater, but the second time through, I just was digging it even more. Just to go back on what you said, because you brought up a good point. Batman started dark, and then there was a little bit of time that he went campy, like in the '60s.
Mhm.
Kind of returned to that dark gothic vibe in the '70s, and really the '80s on up till present day. He maintains that dark, and Gotham has that darkness around it. And I thought Matt Reeves did an awesome job to kind of capture the spirit of of the vibe of the comic books for sure. It's dark, like you said. It's gritty. It's like always raining, and
Mhm.
out of the scenes. It's the kind of movie that after you watch, you want to take a shower. Like I felt up, after that, because it's just, I think emotionally too, it puts you in a different space, and that's, I think, the power of the movie and the storytelling and the cinematography and everything. I mean, listen, Dark Knight trilogy is dark. I think Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises were two very dark movies, but this is like, for me, like horror dark. You know what I mean? The tone changes, and I was trying to kind of ascertain just like what was different about it from The Dark Knight and what made it feel like more like a horror. But just like you said, just the way the film is shot, the scenes. Obviously it's what you want to, the whole thing with the Riddler, the psychological kind of thriller slash horror, this serial killer, and the way he's kind of stalking out these victims. I mean, we could get into some of the scenes that are definitely flat out horror movie scenes, which we will. But all this to say, just to kind of wrap up, definitely the overall vibe, and the tone, is, I was digging it. I enjoyed it. The music, we'll get into that. That's a big part of what makes it feel like a horror movie compared to, Hans Zimmer's music with The Dark Knight.
Yeah, music always music. If you change music in a lot of movies, it would change the genre completely. Completely.
Good point. Yeah. Point.
um, I wanted to ask you, do you think that Gotham feel more like the way that Matt Reeves have made this film? Do you think Gotham has more of a horror setting, or does it still have some type of superhero setting?
Yeah.
Just the city overall.
Just the city overall. I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix of both. It's what, when I'm reading the Batman comics. Well, actually, I'd have to go through, specific issues. Some have more of a horror kind of, the villain in it kind of gives you that sense that a lot of times with the Joker, you know, they make him so diabolical and evil that you can kind of get that, but you don't have, like you just said, you don't have the music, right? You don't have this. Um, but the way Gotham is depicted in certain comics, you know, has a little bit of that horror. I'm going to say Killer Bee, probably a mix. I could feel that it's, you know, just the way some of the scenes were shot makes you feel like more of, you know, you're in a horror, you know, the lens is more of a horror movie where you're seeing Gotham City, and some of it's more of that heroic, you know, that hero's journey. Cause, you know, this is Bruce Wayne in what, his like second year or whatever. So I would say it's a healthy mix. And then just to kind of add to that, overall, the movie having both elements of horror and, you know, the hero, I thought is kind of cool, because you don't always get that. You know, sometimes horror movies are so dark that there doesn't seem like there's any hope within the movie. Although, you know, in a lot of these slasher films, the final girl becomes the hero, you know. But it's different when, you know, when you have like an established character, you know, that has that heroic kind of, you know, entity or vibe, you know, to it. Because like you're watching this thing and you're just feeling how dark it is, but you know, like waiting in the wings, you do have this, you know, this blossoming hero that's, you know, fresh on the scene, that is going to intervene with this, that's going to, you know, that deal with this, you know, this psychotic killer. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool, you know, because you don't always have that type of those ingredients mixed in a film. So from that point of view, I you know, I thought it was kind of unique. And
Okay. Actually, how do you feel? You know, do you think that this, when you were watching the film, do you feel like it felt more like a horror film, or could you still feel the, you know, the superhero aspect of it all?
I mean, I don't have a ton to compare it to with the superhero stuff. Because I don't even know what other Batman movies I've seen or anything like that. But I think it really does kind of encapsulate the horror in this one. I mean, everything's like just so dark. Everything is wet. It's kind of a decaying, you know, concept. I think that it does a really good job with that.
Okay. Yeah, you know, like you just said, you know, King. I remember I think it was at the beginning of the film, when Batman was talking, you know, through the different scenes and stuff. I think he said the city was eating itself.
Mm,
Um it everything about this film made me think about Seven so much, because it was always rainy in Seven as well.
yeah.
So but yeah, I think that um when he said that, especially, you know, since we decided to do it for this show, when I was watching it, you know, I was just trying to pay attention to, you know, everything that was being said and all of this scenes that was, you know, being shown or whatever. When he said that the city was eating itself,
Mhm.
I thought about zombie films almost immediately, because
Mhm.
when zombie apocalypse happened, you know, in films, you know, the city kind of tears itself apart. So that made me think about that. I want to go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, good catch on that, Killer Bay. I didn't put
Uh,
it together. I remember that line, but I didn't put that together. But yeah, I'm sure he put that in for purposely, you know.
yeah. Also, I don't know why, but anytime I like think about Gotham, like I grew up in Detroit, so I can kind of see the similarities, or like a New York, because New York is a lot bigger than Detroit. It seemed like, I don't know, it just seemed to have that dark grittiness, like we kind of said before. But I do want to get into a specific scene, the opening scene, um, with the Riddler, when
Hmm.
when he was at the mayor's house.
Yeah.
So this, like when I seen this for the first time, I was like, this is really like, it's not scary, of course, but it has a horror vibe for sure, because the Riddler is just in the shadows standing behind the mayor. You know, it felt almost like a Halloween
For
Mhm.
sure.
vibe. You know, he's just kind of, you know, he's there, we can see him, but the mayor is just completely oblivious to him. And I like how that scene was done because the only light we see in that room is from the TV. So it added a layer, when we seen the Riddler pop up, when we got flashes from the screen, we seen the Riddler or whatever. And the way, he took out the mayor as well. It felt a lot darker than some of the other Batman films, and again, gave off a 7 type of vibe. Which I love. Yeah, well, what did you think about that opening scene with the Riddler?
Yeah, a lot to say. I think the freakiest part of that scene was like the gasp that the Riddler gives right before he hits the mayor over the head. I think it's the Riddler. It just sounds really like, yeah, it's kind of sick. The Riddler, I think the scene as a whole is a good way to start the movie because right away it sets the tone. I think it's kind of like what you said. It gives you the Michael Myers vibe where all of a sudden he's in the room. And I never really got that vibe of Riddler like that in the comics. I mean, over the years, he got more and more dark. All the storylines and the villains did. But the way his mask was, I think really looked freaky. And then like what transpires like after that scene where he's taping him up and all this stuff. The visual of the Riddler is freaky. I think they have the music going on, right? The score plays to me more like a horror film than a superhero genre film. Yeah, no, I think Matt Reeves nailed it in that opening scene, and I think it's it's like a microcosm of all of what's to come, in that opening scene. One other scene that I wanted to add to that, if it's okay, because I wrote down that scene, Killer Bee and Ashley, and then I also wrote the scene where Selena and the DA come out of the Iceberg Lounge, and the Riddler he's already in, kind of like Michael Myers, right? He's already in the DA's car, and you get the POV of Riddler looking from the car to the conversation between Selena and the DA. Selena can't wait to get the heck away from the DA, right?
Yeah.
Get away quick enough. And you're like, all right, we kind of know. It's like the slow burn of knowing what his fate is. He's going to go to the car, and then the moisture, on the window, kind of like Halloween, the first Halloween, right? When Annie goes into the car, and so that scene pops up too. I think those two scenes definitely set the tone and make you feel like you're watching a horror movie. While some scenes feel like an action superhero vibe too, mixed with the horror aesthetic, so yeah, killer scenes right there. And I think I appreciate him more the second time I watched him. Definitely.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said about the Riddler, the mask of the Riddler. I'm used to the Jim Carrey look of the Riddler from the 90s. So I was a little confused to see how he looked. Did he look like that in any of the comics before?
I don't remember him. And listen, if it is, I tell my students this all the time. I only have so much working memory space, remember everything with this, busy, on the go multitasking day and age. And I've read thousands of these comics. Matter of fact, the phone right now is on one of my comic boxes, and I'm looking at like just tons and tons of these long boxes of comics, a lot of which are Batman. So I can't remember every single issue that I read. Maybe someone will post while they're watching. If there was ever an issue where Riddler had a mask like that, no. And there was different iterations of Riddler and how he looked, and some were much different than the Riddler that we all think of, like Jim Carrey, Frank Gorshin in the Adam West film. But I don't remember him ever having that mask unless there was like an Elseworld story that was not in canon, like not in regular continuity. But I think that was a real unique take on the Riddler. But I was excited about it, and I was pumped about it because, he's taken a character that, some of these characters are hard to translate, to the silver screen on the big screen. And to make a audience like a modern day audience, buy into it, and really feel like, you know, interested enough, or yeah, like, I guess in this case, kind of freaked out enough, right? Because what Matt Reeves was going for was, this really kind of scary situation, this horror film. I think that it was cool. Like, I remember when I first saw the picture of the Riddler and I first was, hearing what the movie was about, I was like, that's cool. He's taking it somewhere where Riddler hasn't been yet, and he's taking Batman, in film where he hasn't been yet. Because like it's hard to outdo the Dark Knight trilogy, in my opinion, because it was such an awesome trilogy, and it pretty much had a lot of different really cool elements. So yeah, kudos to Matt Reeves, and furthermore, I'm excited where he's going to take these characters, moving forward. But no, that was the long answer. But the short answer is I've never seen that version of the Riddler before, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked when I seen it.
Yeah, sure, me too.
But speaking of the Riddler, let's kind of dive into him a little bit more in this film. Ashley, do you because we kind of talked a little bit about before how he kind of reminded us of John Doe from Seven, with his kind of sense of morality and the reason why he was doing all of these things to these officials. Um, what did you think about the Riddler as a serial killer, basically? Do you think that added to the horror in this film?
Yeah, for sure. Because one thing that comes to mind for me is the Zodiac, with kind of like the taunting the police and the little cryptic notes and all that kind of stuff. And the Zodiac obviously is unsolved, so that's one that always sticks in my mind, and I can't ever make it go away. So I liked the little tie in there, and then I think I also said a little bit of Jigsaw in him as well. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. With the puzzles
Mhm.
and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely some Jigsaw in there. Um, and him feeling like he's better than
Oh yeah.
uh. Well, he's really only attacking the people in the system that's corrupt. That he know for sure that's corrupt.
Mhm.
Some of them, not all of them, obviously,
Right.
but yeah, the Riddler, definitely a lot of his scenes added a lot of horror elements. The thumb drive scene, I thought that was pretty funny, with the thumb being cut off and
yeah,
everything like that.
yeah.
Um, the rat scene is
Oh,
like it's like, yeah, a lot of scenes in this film felt more horror than it did, a comic book film or superhero film or whatever. So, um, I, I think there's a lot of horror elements throughout this film for sure. Um, Another scene in the beginning that I wanted to talk about was when the I don't know what gang they were, but they were on the train and
yeah,
they was following that guy, and then they kind of hear footsteps, and then we see Batman emerge from the darkness. Felt very much like Michael Myers. um and it's such a great shot and a great scene. But it made me think like Batman really is, depending on your point of view, because if you're a criminal, he's really like a villain to them, you know.
100.
So go ahead.
No, no, you can finish that line. I was just vibing off what you're saying. 100%, Killer Break.
Uh I think that you know, he even, I think throughout the film he even talked about, obviously we know he called himself Vengeance and stuff like that. But a lot of people, or a lot of criminals in Gotham, feared him. Like, the back signal in the air, a lot of criminals would just look into the darkness because they don't know if he's really there or not. I think really a lot of those scenes in the beginnings really added the horror element to them.
Yeah,
Um, because it was just a lot of darkness, and you're trying to make out a shape, like, is he there, is he not? Really made me think about Michael Myers a lot. um but yeah, can you speak to that? That's me, a lot of those scenes in the beginning, how he would come out of the darkness, and we kind of see Batman as a symbol of fear for a good portion of the film. um would you agree with that?
100%. And he is depicted like that in the comic books, for sure. Was Riddler ever as badass like as Batman was in the comics? Well, maybe later iterations or versions of him, but Batman, like I said, pretty much from the 70s on, and then like mid 80s till present day, he's really had that persona. And I think they did a great job. Matt Reeves and the team did a great job of bringing that onto the big screen. And it's kind of like what I was saying earlier, like you have a horror, like you have a villain that's so, psychotic, that's a serial killer that's like, demented. But then you have the hero, the protagonist is just as dark and has that element of horror. And like you just said it best, to the crooks and to the villains and, to the bad guys, pretty much he's like a horror movie. So I always kind of thought that was, there's been a handful of movies, and I could share one or two that I remember, that they've pitted, the bad guy versus the good guy, like in that format, which is kind of rare. You don't like always see that. There's like some, like, so one movie that I wanted to bring up was, and Swift brought it up from the Horror Heads. Shout out to Swift from Horror Heads 365. I think he brought it up in one of their live streams, and I really enjoyed the movie. Was Silent Rage. It was a early Chuck Norris action movie meets horror movie. So it's an action movie. It might be an interesting movie for you guys to cover in Hidden Horrors. It's an action movie, but then it's got like the horror feels going on in it. And I just remember watching that as a kid and say, there's this horror element. There's this, really kind of disturbing kind of, maniac kind of killer in the movie. But then you got Chuck Norris, who's kind of like, everyone knows Chuck Norris pretty badass, right? So like you just feel like, I think as someone that's viewing the movie, as the viewer, that as dark as it gets, you're like, all right, well, that waiting in the wings is this hero that's going to come in and that's going to combat that horror. So with Batman, I think they did an amazing job. The scene that you brought up, you just thought it was so bleak for that guy on the train running away from the joke. I guess they're like an imitation Joker gang, right? That is running after, their victim. And then when you hear the footsteps like that, like you put Killer B, right away, you're like, all right, the tables are quickly turned. You don't have that, you're not scared for the victim anymore. You're scared for the Joker gang, at that point in time. And that scene was just sick, so yeah, 100%. I think they did a great job throughout the movie, how they portray Batman. And, I was going to share, like, I loved Selena Kyle and Zoe Kravitz in this. I thought she was dynamite. I like Commissioner Gordon a lot. The jury's out for me on Alfred. I just wanted to look at this movie from a positive lens, and I want to see like where it goes. I didn't know what to make of Alfred, and I think I think the Pattinson version of Batman will have to grow on me. And the one thing that I'll say is, this is a young Batman. This is Batman year 2. You know what I mean? So I think he's going to grow into, I think he's even going to grow more and I'm really excited to see where Matt Reeves takes, the rest of this Bat universe, like for the sequel. So the first time I was like, I was on the fence. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, no, Robert Pattinson did a good job. And I think it's even going to get better and better, for what it's worth. That's just my opinion,
I hope that it gets better. I
Yeah.
watched the Penguin show I don't know if you've seen
Yeah.
it.
You know what? I'm happy you brought that up. It's on my list. Like after I rewatched Batman 2022, I'm like, how didn't I know all my friends and everyone's saying like, you gotta check it out. So you guys didn't watch it yet.
I watched it. She
Oh,
didn't watch it.
Ashley,
I think you would like it.
Maybe.
It's I mean it's like a crime family type of thing. It's not. It's dark.
Mhm.
It's darker than the movie is actually.
It's just one season.
Yeah,
oh,
they like it just came out this year.
Oh,
I think they won like 9 Emmys
oh, damn.
Sunday for
yes.
the I think
It's
I
crazy.
think it's a great show. It's a great show.
What do you think of the Penguin? Like in this movie, I thought he what's his name?
Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell. I just was watching the interview with him and Margot Robbie. Colin Farrell's transformation. What did you guys think of that? I mean, that was wild.
It was wild.
Yeah.
It was wild, but I mean, he did such a good job, and almost like I feel like he made me laugh in a lot of the scenes, but maybe that's just me. But the one part when he was like cussing them out over their Spanish translations, and I don't know, that part made me laugh, but
Yeah, because yeah.
He brought some comic relief into it because that
yeah,
needed some of that. It was
yeah.
so dark. Yeah, he was awesome. I should have said him earlier. He was definitely a high point in the film too. I definitely bought into his, and in the comics he transformed into that, like this kind of crime boss. He has the iceberg lounges in the comics. So I think that depiction of Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, was kind of more connected to what the comics. I mean, Riddler was always into trying to outsmart the Batman. That was his big thing. I mean, Batman is like one of the greatest, detectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like always trying to outdo him. And, to give him the kind of the serial killer kind of MO and to tie that with it, that was cool. Like we talked about that earlier, but the Penguin was, I think, more spot on to, what you see is what you get kind of with the comics comparison.
I want to mention something you had said about how Batman was just as dark as the Riddler was, and thinking about other movies. John Wick is a really good movie because
Yeah.
he's actually called the Boogeyman in the movie.
Yeah.
So that's another one. That's another one.
Bringing that up, there's a bunch of those movies that you can't always remember, but John, now that you said it, you just feel like there's a feeling that you get when how bad it gets, what they do to John Wick, how that movie starts out. But then when you see him, get into action, you're like, all right, he's more badass than the the darkness of the villains. Cobra with Stallone comes up. Did you ever see? You saw that? Did you see that in the 80s? Cobra.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, that same feel. Like there's such a darkness in the villain or villains, I should say. But then you have the action hero that kind of stabilizes that, and there's more a balance, But I'm gonna start thinking now that we're talking about this. I'm gonna make a list of movies kind of with that. They don't always come around, but when they do, I enjoy them.
For sure.
I was just thinking, like, is part 2 gonna be something totally different? Because Batman Begins was different than The Dark Knight, and then The Dark Knight Rises. I kind of felt like the mold, really, the beginnings of the trilogy, of the story, were set in Batman Begins, but then The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises really kind of brought it to another level. So like I was wondering, like, is the sequel to this going to have any of the horror feel? Yeah, it might be dark and gritty, but will it have that horror element? And then with that, will the music be different? Will we hear Batman's kind of theme build up to become more like heroic? Like I kind of feel like it's missing like a I mean, I know he has his theme, but I don't know. I think I'm hoping that they develop it more, like the composer develops it more, maybe when the character of Batman develops, and like who knows what the tone of the second movie is. I don't know what you guys thought of that. Like, what are they going to do for part 2? Is it going to have any of this horror feel, or is it just going to be a whole new
I
different?
think it. I think it depends on which character they choose for the villain.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
don't. I don't think. I don't think they're doing the Joker next. Although we did kind of see him at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think we're getting the Joker next, but I think it depends on which Batman villain they choose to go with. But I feel like it's gonna stay, in that gritty. I think we'll still get some horror elements. I don't know if it'll be as many as this film.
Right.
But again, like I said, I think it just depends on the character for the villain that they go with. Um,
Revolves around the tone of the movie. It has a lot to do with that. But they're going to put out the Clayface movie, which is going to be tied to this, which is going to be a horror movie. He's another really cool. There's been different versions of Clayface that's canon in the story, and that's going to be exciting to see.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Um, Ashley, do you have any other horror elements or anything?
I think we pretty much covered everything that I had written down.
Okay. I'm trying to think of some other scenes off the top of my head. I mean, because there's a lot. Like you said, I really liked Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
I think she had some really cool moments and scenes. Another scene actually just came to mind that because she was in it. The scene where we see his Batmobile for the first time.
Yeah.
That was almost like the beginning of the film when we see him for the first time. It was kind of in the shadows, and then we started to see like the shape of the car, and then eventually seeing the whole thing. Um, even the car, his car was made into something to be feared because that
Yeah.
that thing was a tank.
Yeah. Move over, Christine. Right. It's like Batmobile was sick in that opening scene, and then I love the scene where Penguin's like cursing. He's like, "Yeah, I got you." When they're in that car chase, and then the Batmobile comes right through the flames, and it's
Like
just
a bat out of hell.
yeah, exactly. Like that Batmobile version was more simplistic than some of the ones like in the Justice League, and I like the Tumbler a lot, but I think that one easily became one of my favorites just because it's got such a cool, sleek look, you know. So that's another part of the Batman mythos, right? In the Batman universe that I think Matt Reeves did an awesome job, bringing to the big screen, for sure.
Um, you said you don't have any other.
Nope.
Do you have any other like elements that we might have missed or?
I wrote some notes down. We hit a lot of them, to be honest. Yeah, no, we hit a lot of the things that I said, guys. The one thing I did want to share with you guys, because I told you I would, was a couple of recommendations. Bat comics, maybe a few of them, if you want, if you're up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you guys are into the horror deal. So, well, first of all, this was a big influence on the movie. If you want to go read, and I don't want to give anything away. So just check out. Could you see it, or is it too much of a glare?
No, I
Batman.
could see it.
Yeah, Batman: The Long Halloween. This definitely had an influence. Either I read that or I just felt it when I was watching it. So it was a comic series that came out, I think in I want to say the late '90s. But it's all together in a trade paperback. So I think you would. I don't think you'd be disappointed. The Long Halloween. As far as horror stuff goes, Batman and Dracula, Red Rain. That's a Elseworlds. It's not canon to the Batman, story, but it's really good. And I don't have it because I couldn't find it with all these comics. It's somewhere here. Gotham by Gaslight. Batman and Jack the Ripper. That's really sick.
Oh wow.
Early 80s, there was a really cool series where Batman went against this like vampiric couple, the Mad Monk and Dala, and it was like I don't know if there's a collected version, but there's some really cool like gothic art. Gene Colan was one of the like comic horror artists of the 70s, and this is like early 80s, where Batman actually becomes, I think Batman and Robin both get infected and they become like vampires. It's cool. The Alpha and Omega of Batman is Batman Year One, and I think you might enjoy that, guys, because you just watched like Batman in Year Two. So, and this is the beginnings of Batman, where they retold his origin. I think it's like 1986 or 87 or so. So you got, and this is the the collected edition of it. It's got all the elements. It's got Catwoman in there, Alfred, Commissioner Gordon, and it's like Year One. And then Omega, The Dark Knight Returns. And I remember,
Nice.
and that this is another late 80s. This is like a potential possible future of where Batman could go. And it's a really cool story by Frank Miller. So
he got a lot of comics.
What'd you say?
I say he got a lot of comics.
Yeah, I'm a comic geek, so I'm enjoying all of them now, and I'll probably hold on to a certain batch that are my go-tos, but at some point, I will turn it over, to a business. And I think it'd be cool. Like when I was younger, I always enjoyed going into buying the new comics, right, that come out every Wednesday, but then going into a store that had like all vintage collectibles and comics, and then just getting like that full immersion, immersive experience in all of that. So I think it's cool to at one point in time to be able to do that. So that's the plan. We'll see how I do.
Nice. Well, I want to thank you for coming on here. This is a fun episode. I knew you would have a lot of insight about Batman, and
Yeah.
I never told my story about Batman. When I was younger, I was in 5th grade, I believe.
Okay.
I was in 5th grade, and my school it had this I think it was called a cotillion ball, and we got dressed up. We learned how to ballroom dance and stuff like that, and we had to answer these questions that we had to say, at this cotillion ball. And one of the questions is, who is your favorite hero? Now, a lot of people said their mom, dad, grandparents. I said Batman, not really understanding the question, and they wouldn't let me change it, so I had to go on for like the whole year saying, Batman was my favorite hero. And always thought that was funny. But I want to thank you again for coming on. Let everybody know where they can find you on Instagram and things like that.
Yeah. Just search BatFan Comics. I try to, it's so busy now. The school year started. I try to post at least, once or twice a day. Maybe the weekends I can get into a little bit more. I post all of my collection. That'll be up for grabs at some point. All my Batman stuff daily. Then I try to do, other things like Marvel Monday. I do my Terrifying Tuesday, where I feature some of my horror collectibles. I'm really into the horror stuff too, and movies and collectibles. So yeah, just check me out. I really just want to say thank you all that have been checking out and supporting the page. I really feel all the love. So I just got to give a shout out to all you BatFan comic fans out there. And you could also check me out on Facebook, Monsterized BatFan Collectibles, where I get into a little bit more of the horror stuff, some deep dive videos that I put out on horror movies and horror collectibles.
Nice. Thank you again for coming on. Ashley, do you have anything else to say?
No.
Well, guys, you can check us next week, which I believe we will start. Yes, I think I can give that away. If you like wizards, you'll be very interested in our next
Oh.
set of videos. So until then, check you next time.
Thank you.